Howdy guys, Jimmy Song here. In this video, I'm going to do a post-mortem on Bitcoin Cash. And I say post-mortem very literally. I think Bitcoin Cash as a project is dead. It is now two different things. And there are really new launches of different coins, basically, with a particular ledger that happens to be whatever Bitcoin Cash was it happens to agree with what Bitcoin Cash was on November 15th. So it's a project that lasted, at least in my mind, about a year and 3 months, year and 4 months, something like that. And they went through a bunch of hard forks. They tried a bunch of different things. But if you think about it, I think the futures via BTC before the August 1st hard fork that created Bitcoin Cash was around $475, and this was at a time when Bitcoin was at around $2,700. So from that point on to to the point that Bitcoin Cash split into Bitcoin ABC and Bitcoin SV. It reduced that value reduced over time, right? Like it went from 475 to, I can't remember. Let me look up what BCH charts were. See, Bitcoin Cash price chart. Let's see what it was in. Let's see, on November 15th. So actually, that's a weekly, so I'm not going to be able to see the daily. All right, so November 15th, it was trading at around $410, right around $410. So over the course of a year and 3 months or so, from like sort of the pre-trade futures markets, 475 or so, it did hit like a peak of, I don't know, 800, something like that. Or I mean, a lot of people paid like $3,000, which is kind of crazy. But it ended, and I consider Bitcoin Cash tab ended on November 15th at around $400. So there was sort of like a steady price depreciation, while at the same time Bitcoin went from like 2,700, or I guess if you take out that futures aspect, it was like 2,200 or something like that, all the way to I think on that day it was around 5,000 or something, 6,000, somewhere on there. So I mean that speaks volumes about where the actual value is. It isn't in the ability to have lots and lots of transactions. So that's one of the postmortems that we can take away from Bitcoin Cash. That experiment was more about like increasing transaction capacity, and despite all of the rhetoric about how transaction capacity would increase adoption and so on, they never really got going on that front. And in fact, it seems to have decreased their price. And this is something that we've been talking about quite a bit. The more people use a monetary medium as a method of payment and not value it as a store of value, the lower the price goes, because you don't have a reason to really hold it. If it's used purely as a method of payment, then you get in, pay with it, and get out, right? The merchant gets out. Neither side wants to hold. Store of value doesn't magically happen because you've used it as a method of payment once or twice. That's generally not how humans are. They hold things that they find valuable, and it doesn't have value if all you're doing is giving it away for something else, right? Like that's not value. That only works if the other person values it, and they don't either if they're trading it straight for fiat or whatever. So this is one of the things from the Bitcoin Cash experiment that we really need to talk about, is that the entire method of payment use case on which Bitcoin Cash was founded actually ended up decreasing the value of their network over time. And even if you look at what's happening with BAB and BSV, you can see that as a network, they both sort of lost in Bitcoin terms over what used to be a single coin, BCH. That's another thing. Like in a method of payment use case, or like in sort of a tight-knit community that BCH was, splitting the community actually decreases the network value significantly. And it was, at least from price perspective, roughly a 60-40 split. So a lot of people, like, at least economically, I don't know by number of people, but economically, it's a 60-40 split. It was closer to 50-50, maybe 51-49, something like that. Who knows? But it's not an asymmetric split. It's more of an even split here, and that split is terrible for something that purports to be a method of payment, because they were trying to build all these communities, right? Like yours.org, and trying to get people to spend, and Roger's going around trying to make community, and he's hiring all sorts of people to Bitcoin.com and everything else. I honestly wonder, like, once Roger has to fire a bunch of those people, how many of them will continue to be shilling BCH or BAB, I guess, right now? Because a lot of them were paid to do it. It's going to be another thing when Roger fires them. How are they going to handle that emotionally? Because a lot of the people that are in that community, I believe, are doing it like sort of as an emotional attachment, not necessarily something that they've rationally thought through. So, we're in this situation with BAB and BSV where roughly half the community, or at least the economic value, has split off from each other, and that seems to have hurt both communities, and and that's going to continue happening if they split again. Now, this is, of course, a deterrent for further splits, but the main reason they split in the first place was because it was centralized, and they didn't like what the centralized decision makers were doing, so they split off, and that's going to, I think, continue to happen because you can't really solve centralization. That as a problem, and also have the ability to just leave willingly. It's going to be very difficult unless there's some sort of network lock-in, and there's not really, because you can go and create your own coin, and there's a lot of economic incentive to. All right, so other things that we learned from BCH. It looks like a lot of the people that were in it, like that sort of talk big in that community. That's exactly what they were doing. They were just talking. They weren't actually acting. Roger Ver in particular has been, telling everybody that this is a real Bitcoin. He's where is he emotionally right now, right? Like, if you watch some of his latest videos, it's clear that there's sort of a somberness, right? Like, knowing that, okay, this giant setback. He was talking about the flippening for a while. Not so much anymore, right? Like BAB, BSV, neither community talks about any sort of flippening unless it's with each other. It's very much okay. Like, yeah, it's clear that something went horribly wrong, and that the split itself sort of proved its the centralized nature of it, and that it can't be both voluntary and be that centralized without some consequences. So. Yeah, it looks like there's a lot to be learned here. Generally, contentious hard forks are going to result in multiple chains, and I don't know. Are a lot of those BCH people coming back to BTC? I'm not. I'm guessing not. I'm guessing most of them have just sort of left crypto altogether. Maybe they'll take a look at it in like 3-4 years or something like that, or maybe the next bubble. I don't know. That might happen in 3-4 years. I don't know. But these are all things that we can take away. But BCH, I think, is dead. It's just BAB and BSV now. And I think it was an interesting experiment to watch. There was a lot of bluster for like a year and 3 months. I think we'll be making a lot more of these like funeral videos of experiments that kind of went awry and sort of died. This one sort of had a weird ending because it split into two. But yeah, I mean, maybe one has some of the legacy, the other has some of the legacy. I don't know. Like, regardless, they're new coins, right? Because they hard forked and they had all sorts of new features added, and really, it's just a new coin with the ledger whose beginning state happened to be the same as whatever. they'll be fighting with each other for a while because they don't like each other. And you can, if you want to see that, like go to like RBTC or our Bitcoin SV or something like that. There's plenty of nastiness there. It's hilarious how much they've turned on each other instead of like all their guns from Bitcoin. I mean, not that Bitcoin really cares because it's not centralized, but it's hilarious how many people are sort of like justifying staying in Bitcoin Cash, like doing all sorts of mental gymnastics to, justify their still being involved in BAB or BSV. So I don't know. It'll be an interesting thing to watch. At some point they'll mentally have to reset because reality is pretty much telling everybody that neither of those coins is the future. That they're not going to be worth all that much relative to Bitcoin, and they're going to continue to decrease over time. Anyway, that was kind of a long rant. Hopefully that helps you. Let me know what you think in the comments. This song is done.